Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Tonight's special guest that we have with us is Melanie Sims-Henning, and she is part of the Symphony Natural Health a company, a wonderful company. And we are just so grateful for Melanie being here with us. Thank you so much, Melanie.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
So you have a really amazing topic to share with us tonight. And I know that all of us are thirsty for knowledge.
No pun intended, right? So that's yeah, tonight the title of the talk is Hydration Nation, the importance of and the tips to maximize hydration for optimal health. We take hydration for granted, so much so, and we don't really give it the credit that it deserves to stay adequately hydrated. So tonight we're going to talk about hydration and what it means and how to adequately do that. I'll start with a quote by Dr. Dana Cohen. Dr. Dana Cohen is out of New York City. She's a medical doctor that specializes in integrative health. And she wrote the book recently called Quench. So Quench is, it's with the subtitles of Beat Fatigue, Drop Weight, and Heal Your Body Through the New Science of Optimum Hydration. So hydration, as she says, is an essential human need, yet we foolishly continue to underestimate its importance. And your level of hydration impacts the strength of your immune system, the elasticity of your skin, your energy level, how easily you can move, and your body's overall resistance to aging, as we all are fighting that uphill battle. It even can determine how good you feel when you wake up in the morning. And we know that it has a big impact on our cognitive well-being and our mental health as well. Oops. So water in the body, it really goes to every major system and every major organ system in the body. You'll see that it's responsible for that synovial fluid in our joints, so preventing that arthritis or that bone on bone. As we get older, that can happen more. So water is essential for just keeping those joints lubricated. In our digestion, obviously, it's important in our saliva to moisten the food and to digest. But as we get down to the lower GI, it helps to break down the food and actually absorb the food into our system with all those good nutrients that we need. In the blood, it actually moves the oxygen and glucose. And I'll mention this again later in the slides, but water actually follows glucose in the body. So if you're drinking a lot of sugary types of drinks to stay hydrated, you're going to actually lose more water than maybe what you're getting from that drink. So something to keep in mind. Water also helps us to eliminate toxins through your urination. It's in our tears, our mucus, saliva, other secretions, really in all of our mucosal passages and all of our mucosal lining of the body. And it helps to regulate hot and cold in our body as well. So I'm here in Colorado where it can be pretty dry and it can be really cold at times. But that hydration is going to be essential for regulating the temperature with hot and cold. So maintaining proper hydration, it's important to recognize that water is involved, again, in every biochemical reaction in the body. And maintaining proper hydration is perhaps one of the most undervalued health-related behaviors that we can do. Proper hydration may logically seem to be a simple problem-solution dynamic. So if you're dehydrated, you just drink more, but it's not as simple as that. Where you think, well, we'll replace the water loss by drinking more. Proper hydration, however, like I said, is not always as simple as that. And to fully recognize the biological implications, it is best to refer to dehydration as actually an induced bodily stress. So it's an insult to the body when we are actually dehydrated. Mild to severe dehydration is a prevalent issue across every demographic, even in these United States. And even when individuals have access to clean drinking water. So it's not just third world countries that are having issues with dehydration. It's also here in the United States. According to researchers, dehydration accounts for one of the main reasons behind emergency hospital admissions. in the US, and it's equated to an estimated $5.5 billion annually in healthcare costs, just because we're not hydrated enough. The human body is actually made up of approximately 55 to 80% water, and it depends on our age. As you see in infancy, it's about 80%. Then in adolescence, it's about 70%. It also depends on gender, where men have a little bit more of a body hydration than a percentage than women. And that's because they have more of a muscle mass than women do. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. About 2/3 of our total water volume is inside of our cells, referred to as the intracellular space, such as our brain, our heart, our lungs, our kidney, etc. And then the remaining 1/3 is extracellular tissue that's surrounded, supporting, giving structure to the cells and tissues in the body. So connective tissues and blood. And I mentioned it's vital for transporting that oxygen and glucose throughout the body as well. So why do men have a greater water percentage than human? I kind of alluded to this a little bit. It's because in general, and I say in general because it doesn't fit every man or woman, but mostly men have a higher muscle mass than women do. And therefore, women getting and preserving muscle is important, is important, and efficient hydration goes alongside of that. We should all strive to maintain muscle mass for a myriad of reasons, and this is one of those reasons. A lot of times we'll go by the 8x8 rule, or 8 cups of water 8 times a day. And that really doesn't apply to many people. So the US National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, 8.8 or 8 times 8 cups of water a day is about 2 liters of water. And that's okay if you're about 120 pounds. Not many of us are 120 pounds. And so as an adult, we actually recommend at least a minimum for women of 2.7 liters or 11.5 cups of water. And for men, it would be 3.7 liters or 15.5 cups of water for the daily intake. There's estimates that 75% of American population is in a chronic state of dehydration, which is pretty big when you think of it. And this spans all age ranges. Humans lose 2 to 3 liters a day, about 60 to 100 ounces of water through breathing, sweat, urine, and waste daily. And there's a delicate balance of water lost from the body, and that's consumed to maintain homeostasis. It is true that once you are thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So it's important that we keep up on this hydration ahead of time, and that we're consuming water on a regular basis. And we'll talk about the difference of waters, because water is not just water, to be honest. Not replacing water that is lost can cause the brain to send hormone signals to divert water away from the non-life sustaining areas in order to regulate function of more important organs like your brain, heart, and liver. So it's one more stressful assault to the body, and that's why we call it an insult to the body, or an actual stressful event. You also need to account for where you live. So here in Colorado, it's a very dry climate. We want to take in extra water. If you live in a very humid climate where you're sweating a lot, you want to account for that as well. So how much do you perspire? If you're active and you're working out quite a bit, then consuming more water on top of that, on top of the average of what we recommend. How much caffeine do you take in? So if you're taking in caffeine, then you're duplicating that 1-for-1. Cup of coffee, you need to add more water to your diet there. Your health status, if you're not in great health, or if you're immunocompromised, then you might need to take in more water than the average as well. And then if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you definitely need to be taking in more water too, with a minimum of about 2 ounces of water per pound per day. So just a 2% reduction, when we say 2% dry, it happens to most of us somewhere in our day about 3 o'clock, when our circadian rhythms are at its lowest, and when we get really tired. That's when we want a siesta. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We all are, most of us, about 90% of Americans they tested are in a low-grade dehydration at that time of day. And as the day progresses, we increase that gap between optimal hydration and dehydration. So day after day, it's a chronic state throughout our lifetime. We stress our body more and more in the process that accelerates aging significantly while diminishing energy, well-being, immunity, and more, adversely affecting almost every aspect of one's health. Everyday studies prove that even minor dehydration can make both major and minor aches and pains. So think of joint pain, lower back pain. It's maybe not just because we're getting older, but we could be a little bit on the dry side. If you suffer from migraines or post-surgical pain, then that can be worsened when you're dehydrated, for sure. Synovial fluid that we mentioned that's in our joints directly lubricates your joints, and it's made primarily of water. So if you're dehydrated, you're going to get more of that bone-on-bone rubbing or more of that arthritic type of symptoms that goes along with it. And the fluid reduces the friction. Synovial fluid reduces the friction that helps maintain healthy tissue and joints. So we just want to hit it home that it goes into really every aspect and how great hydration can be, just with just solving for minor issues that we don't maybe account for being dehydrated. There's a myriad of studies on the topic of hydration, and actually I'm a sports and performance psychologist by trade. I work with Olympic athletes and with professional athletes, and so hydration is a big issue that I always address first and foremost, especially in the training seasons. You get a lot of injury when somebody is dehydrated and just on the drier side of things. But it's really critical importance to our overall health and performance. One study that was published in 2012 from the Journal of Nutrition found that even mild dehydration lowered a woman's concentration levels, and they performed poorly on tests that measured cognition and focus. Conversely, they were able to perform these tests when they were fully hydrated. Dehydration also lowered women's moods, and so just our mental health and well-being overall, which I know we've been bombarded, especially with the pandemic and just with our mental health. Dehydration can definitely lead to a depressed mood. But women are not the only one whose performance is impacted. Athletes aren't the only ones whose performance is impacted. It really crosses the gamut as far as every age and every gender. So hydration and disease, when we look at just comorbidities with hydration or dehydration, you have a lot of cardiovascular conditions, including coronary heart disease, stroke, hypertension, high blood pressure. As we age, sometimes we're put on different statins or different beta blockers for high blood pressure. And really, it can be a sign of just dehydration, just chronically dehydrated. And so with proper hydration, sometimes those medications aren't even necessary because our blood pressure can resume to normal levels. But even mild dehydration, as little as 2%, decrease in hydration can impact the way your blood vessels operate. And it can be very similar to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day when you're just chronically dehydrated. So they say sitting is the new smoking. I would say dehydration is the new smoking as well. And experts at Harvard cite that even low levels of dehydration increase your odds of suffering from a heart attack. So even if you're not predisposed to it genetically, just being dehydrated can give you the propensity to have a heart attack. We also know that it contributes to, like I said, cardiovascular conditions, pulmonary disorders, type 2 diabetes, digestive concerns. And again, we've already mentioned the brain and cognitive function behind it too. So let's talk about hydration and sleep. And sleep is a commodity that a lot of us covet and don't get enough of, obviously. Hydration at its very basics, we know the optimal hydration is required for the mucosal integrity of the mucosal lining. So anything from our eyes, the mucosal lining in our eyes, into our nose, mouth, throat, respiratory system, and GI tract, water is, hydration is critically important for that. And our mucosal lining is really our first line of defense when it comes to our immune health. So it's going to stave off those viruses and bacteria. So by keeping hydrated, we're actually supporting our immune system that way. Adequate hydration actually can prevent leg cramps. So those of you that have leg cramps at night, and this seems to be more of a prevalent issue in adults, it can be just because you're running dry and you need some more electrolytes in your system. Particularly when care is given to the proper consumption of minerals and electrolytes. And we'll talk about electrolytes. Electrolytes are just essential micro minerals. So sodium, calcium, potassium, magnesium, those are the essential electrolytes that, that are used to conduct electricity in our body. So with muscle contraction, with heart contraction, things of that nature. And it's essential that we have proper electrolyte balance. Your body does the lion's share of its detoxification during the period of sleep. And if you're properly hydrated, this detoxification process is one of the main reasons why sleep is so restorative. But if you're dehydrated, then your body's not getting that good repair like it should. New research shows that while you're asleep, your body increases movement of several key fluids, including cerebrospinal fluid, interstitial fluid in our brain, spine, and lymphatic system, as well as other key areas. And this increase in fluid movement also helps your body and brain clear certain metabolites and toxins, such as amyloid proteins, which if you know about amyloid proteins, they're the little plaques that can cause Alzheimer's. And so as your body repairs during the night, as long as you're properly hydrated, it can do its job by clearing those amyloid proteins as well. So let's look at how sleep contributes to dehydration. Oops. I'm going to go back one. So new research suggests that insufficient sleep may cause dehydration by disrupting the release of a hormone that is key to regulating hydration. And this is the ADH or antidiuretic hormone that's really responsible for that homeostasis and keeping us well hydrated. It's the hormone that tells us if we're thirsty or not. It's part of a very complex system, which I probably could go in at length in a separate call. But it shows that dehydration actually can disrupt this hormone and disrupt our sleep. In one study, people who reported that they regularly slept for 6 hours or less each night were up to 60% more likely to be dehydrated than those who slept for 8 hours or 8 hours or more a night. So it actually is directly correlated to our sleep quality. Hydration is essential to weight loss for a number of reasons. We talked about the effects of dehydration on the body's ability to detoxify and rid itself of unwanted materials. One study in 2010 showed that drinking water before every meal actually helps subjects lose about 5 pounds in just 3 months without any other intervention. So without any other supplements, without any other excessive exercise, just drinking water with their meals actually contributed to 5 pounds of additional weight loss. Water increases the activity in our sympathetic nervous system, causing our body to burn more calories. And researchers found that drinking a 16-ounce glass of water boosted our metabolic rate by 20%, or giving us a 260 extra caloric burn. So just by drinking 16 ounces of water, you can, it's like going on a nice little power walk. When choosing water over other beverages, you're contributing to a calorie reduction in many cases, and the consumption of diet soda has repeatedly linked to weight gain, as well as a whole variety of health problems like osteoporosis, stroke, and dementia. For a long time, it was believed that caffeine consumption contributed to dehydration, but this it seems not to be the case, because we find that people do augment their caffeine consumption with water. So it's not proven, but we do know that caffeine acts as a diuretic and can help expel more urine and more water from the body when drank. So it does have a mild diuretic effect. So symptoms of dehydration. Again, and just looking at the body's composition in our adult makeup of 70% water, 24% of it's in bone, 80% in skin, 85% blood, 75% brain, 90% lungs, 75% muscle. We are mostly water as we look at our physiology and our anatomy. But symptoms of dehydration can include dizziness, dark urine. This is a good way to measure if you're getting enough hydration or not. You want that straw light yellow color in your urine to indicate that you're adequately hydrated. If it's dark, then that's definitely going to tell you that you're on the dry side. Dry mouth, headache, fatigue. As we talked about it earlier, approximately 55 to 80% of the human body is water. And water is lost primarily through the urinary system, through the skin and through the lungs as we perspire. Water loss can be exaggerated as body temperatures rise with exercise, illness, and exposure to heat, as well as from dietary choices. So if you're eating a high sodium diet, for instance, and not eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, ideally, we want to get about 20% of our hydration from our food. And so we're not going to get that from meats, proteins, so much as we would from our vegetables and fruits as we consume. Normal dehydration leads to decreased blood volume, decreased blood oxygen, exhaustion, electrolyte imbalance, and possible heat-related injuries. I mentioned with athletes, this is very common at the beginning of a season to have a lot of injuries, and it can be directly related to their hydration status. And even mild dehydration, a 1 or 2% water loss, can impair cognition and overall well-being in adults, as we know. So the physiology of hydration. Ultimately, hydration is regulated by a complicated network of receptors that respond to minute changes in osmolarity. And when I mean osmolarity is like osmosis, so it's the movement of water in and out of the cells. It also responds to minute changes in the water volume in our blood pressure, and electrolyte balance. So when sweat is excessive, for instance, it can be extremely difficult to compensate for this fluid loss. That's why you have to really be preventive and get ahead of the curve. Because once you're thirsty and once you have expended a lot of sweat, it can be too late and you can find yourself in a dehydrated state. Often we turn to performance drinks to replete our loss of bodily fluids. However, researchers found that caffeine-containing beverages offered no performance advantage in the heat. It actually can exacerbate any sort of latent cardiovascular issues. So we would advise to stay away from those caffeine types of performance drinks. And most electrolyte beverages can contain either artificial sweeteners if they're a zero type of label with no calories, or they're going to contain high fructose corn syrup. And as I mentioned before, water follows sugar in the body. So as your body is getting rid of the sugar, it's actually pumping out more water. So it's dehydrating you more than if you were to just not drink the sugary drink in itself. Also, many electrolyte beverages can disrupt the body's osmolarity. I won't mention any brand names, but we know that most of the popular electrolyte drinks are not formulated for the adult physiology, and so it can actually mess up our osmolarity and cause us to even get into situations where it's called third spacing, where we're retaining water in areas where we shouldn't. So it's not in the cells and it's not outside of the cells, it's in between. And that can be quite dangerous, actually, if it's not addressed. So the physiology, and again, we could get into this at length, so I'll try to keep it high level here. But we'll do a quick run through, just understanding how this all works. And just know that, like with everything, the human body wants to achieve homeostasis, so the balance. But this actually has to do with the brain and gut connection in a lot of ways. we start with the top of the hypothalamus and the pituitary glands, which you can see pictured in the diagram. And the hypothalamus and pituitary glands are really like a bridge between the neurological and nervous systems and the glandular hormonal endocrine systems. And so the hypothalamus communicates with the pituitary gland, which then starts sending out signals to the rest of the endocrine system. And so when the body is detected to be low in fluids, it actually will increase. It will increase or stimulate the sense for thirst. So we know that once we're thirsty, we're probably a little bit too dehydrated. So we should get ahead of that if we can. The goal is, generally speaking, again, homeostasis in the balance. Think of homeostasis as just really being the body's balance, or the body's way of like just, being status quo. We don't want to be too much or too little of anything. So osmosis, I mentioned this, and osmosis is the Greek word meaning push. So in biology, the net movement of water molecules through the cell membrane from an area of higher to an area of lower water potential. And this really has to do with our electrolytes. So if our electrolytes are in balance, we are freely flowing with osmosis into the right cells and into the intercellular spaces. But if we are low in electrolytes and even adequately hydrated, this push doesn't balance out the way that it should. So how does this relate to hydration? To answer this, we really have to understand more of osmosis. And osmosis is the movement, again, of water from one place in the body to another that's influenced by the electrolyte concentration, as I mentioned. Electrolytes, again, are those micro minerals that are vital to many key functions in the body. So it's our electrical conduction. So calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, these are all those micro minerals that are responsible for conducting electricity in our bodies, muscle contraction, our heart beating, super essential if you want to stay alive. Since hydration is an integral part to so many biochemical responses, really nearly every one in the body, the regulation of this resource is essential to everything from body temperature to blood volume, blood pressure, and more. So if we go back to the hypothalamus for a moment, we'll find what's called osmoreceptors. And osmoreceptors are these sensitive neurons that are sensitive to changes in the vessel size. So as we are adequately hydrated, those vessels can get enlarged or plump. And as we are dehydrated, they can get narrow or smaller. And so these sensitive neurons are capable of determining how much water and how many electrolytes are in the body based on what they contain themselves. So if hydration is low, these will contain less hydration or osmolarity, and the electrolytes causing them to shrink. But if hydration is high, then it's going to do the opposite. And what will happen is actually that the body will secrete more urine in that type of case if for whatever reason hydration is too high. So you can bet that the body's always going to try to remain in that balance and that homeostasis. So what happens in the body, and I'll depict this in a couple of different ways, but basically a message is sent to the posterior pituitary gland, causing it to produce an antidiuretic hormone, or what's known as ADH. And everybody's probably familiar with the term diuretic. Diuretic just means to increase urine output. Caffeine, again, is considered a diuretic. And technically sugar could be too, because it actually increases the urine output as well. In this case, it will cause the body to retain water because it perceives that there's not enough water in the body, and the body will send a message to urinate less. So one sign of early dehydration or even moderate dehydration is just asking, when have you urinated last? And if it hasn't been within the last hour or so, you could be running a little dry. Conversely, if these receptors are well hydrated, let's say oversaturated in this case, the message to urinate to eliminate some of this is excess. So if you're urinating a lot, and some people find that when they up their water intake, they're urinating quite more. That can just be because the body's not quite used to that type of hydration load, and it can just take a little bit of time to get used to it. Again, the body's goal is to maintain homeostasis in the body. This is just another depiction of how this works. So if the water content of the blood is low, the brain is going to produce more of the antidiuretic hormone, or the ADH. And there's going to be a higher volume of water reabsorbed from the kidney. So the urine output is going to be low. Conversely, if you look at the right side, the water content of the blood, like in the middle, is going to be normal. So that's what we want to achieve. But on the right side, if the water content of the blood is high, the brain is going to produce less of the diuretic hormone, and there's going to be less volume of the reabsorbed urine by the kidney. So there's going to be a large volume of diluted urine, if you will. And so this is where, if you are not opposed to looking at the color of your urine, it can actually really tell you, how well hydrated you are. And you want it to be kind of that yellow straw, like a light yellow straw color. So osmoregulation and osmoreceptors are not the only ones in the body monitoring hydration level, but they belong to a larger pathway called osmoregulation. Another example of the neurons that help regulate hydration are baroreceptors located inside the blood vessel. And this is part of the whole network of the osmoregulatory system. Another example of this is neurons that can help regulate hydration. So if you can imagine that if the water in the blood is high, it's going to elevate blood pressure. Or if the water is in the blood is low, the blood pressure actually could be low. And so it can be directly correlated to blood pressure, either hypertension or hypotension. So this is part of the whole network of osmoregulatory system. And our metabolism. So we mentioned the essentials with staying hydrated and with weight loss. After we drink water, it travels all the way through the digestive tract to the small intestine, to the large intestine, where it's absorbed into the bloodstream. And when we are at rest, the heart pumps about 25% of our blood to the kidneys, where it is filtered to produce urine. When we're properly hydrated, the kidneys will produce approximately 800 to 2,000 milliliters per day. In this case, again, it has a pale yellow shade. That's what we're trying to achieve. 200 milliliters daily is lost through bowel elimination. And on average, without extreme exertion, we lose an average of 500 to 700 milliliters daily just through sweat. And that's not through any added exercise. That's just moving around and doing our daily routine. Lastly, there are insensible water losses, meaning that we don't even realize it, through breathing, additional skin loss, beyond sweating, and that accounts for about 600 to 900 milliliters per day. The status of dehydration can vary depending on if it's mild, moderate to severe. And again, it's considered an insult to the body, resulting in a neuroendocrine negative feedback loop involving the HPA axis. So when we say this, in short, it's that the body is perceiving dehydration as a stress, as if we almost got into a car accident or we lost our job. The body doesn't know how to differentiate between stress. And so this is a physical stressor that we're putting on our bodies just by being dehydrated. And what happens is it causes a stress response and releasing what's known as cortisol, which cortisol, as many may know, can increase weight gain, can increase blood pressure, can cause cardiovascular types of effects, and in a negative way. And so it can suppress the HPA axis, and if chronic, it can be the beginning of just a whole litany of health issues. So again, we want to look at dehydration as is really an insult to the body. So cortisol and thyroid, it's a primary response to biological stress. And again, it can be because you lost your job, or you're in a car accident, or it can just be because you're dehydrated. The body doesn't know how to differentiate between that. It really takes our brain to put some sense or logic behind what's causing us to be stressed. But dehydration is synonymous with biological stress, and therefore can correlate to higher cortisol production and release. There was a study in 2013 that reported cortisol to reproductive hormones are somewhat conflicting. So people that were chronically dehydrated actually had a harder time with fertility. This could be due to the various testing methods and methodologies involving cortisol, but we know that there's a direct correlation between hydration and cortisol production. And then we also know that another action of cortisol is the potentiation of the thyroid hormone, and thyroid is so important for our metabolism and for our regulation of our body temperature. We know that those that run chronically dehydrated had a higher chance of having thyroid or hypothyroid types of issues. And the 2013 study also reiterated the effects of the thyroid hormone on ovulatory hypoandrogenism, sex steroid deficiency, amenorrhea, and premature menopausal levels of elevated serum gonadotropin. So across the board, from young to old, it affects our hormone output and our hormone capability. As discussed, thirst and fluid regulation are coordinated by sensitive osmotic volume and blood pressure stimuli. Thirst sensitivity can decrease as women progress towards menopause due to the changes in central fluid volume. Researchers have reported that women that undergo hysterectomy could be susceptible to post-operative extreme water retention, and there is a fluid shift that causes water to retain faster than sodium. And so this is where that osmolarity is not working properly a lot of times, because we're not taking in the right amount of electrolytes. And so the water's getting stored in the wrong places, not in the cells and not in the interstitial space, but it's almost third spacing. So it's not getting utilized in the right way. Again, the endocrine system works in synchrony to balance the hormonal reactions during episodic and prolonged periods of stress. Hydration status affects estrogen and progesterone levels. And so an underhydrated or dehydrated individual can have direct hormone imbalances. And as do estrogen and progesterone affect the fluid regulation, sodium levels, and blood pressure responses. So it's kind of like a very cyclical, one begets the other. Estrogen can increase osmotic sensitivity to help retain body water in order to help menopausal women avoid dehydration. Similarly, progesterone may balance water and sodium retention by competing with aldosterone. And aldosterone is just another fancy hormone that helps with the regulation of our hydration. If someone is on hormone therapy, I want to mention it's critical to avoid any sort of imbalance with hydration, and because that can actually really throw off the progesterone and estrogen levels as well. Okay, so you've heard me mention electrolytes several times throughout the earlier slides. Again, electrolytes are the tiny minerals that carry an electrical charge. They're vital for health and survival. Electrolytes spark cell function throughout the body. So muscle contraction, heart contraction, vital for us living. They support hydration and help the body produce energy. And they're also responsible for stimulating our heart beating, again, and muscle contractions. Any sort of cramping that can occur, that can be just a sign of low electrolytes and low hydration overall. It also helps to conduct nerve function, and as we mentioned before, blood pressure, and it helps to balance the body's pH levels. Deficiencies or imbalances in electrolytes can cause everything from fatigue and muscle cramping to irregular heartbeat and seizures. When we sweat, we lose electrolytes, so it's important to replace them, obviously. And the amount of electrolytes required in a day is influenced by several factors that we discussed. Age, gender, our activity level, how much water we're consuming, where we live, so on and so forth. So a lot of things to consider that, the average is a good rule of thumb, but it may not apply to everyone. So are all electrolytes the same? No. Several minerals, including zinc, calcium, and magnesium, double as electrolytes once consumed. And every electrolyte plays a special role in the body. However, sodium, chloride, and potassium are especially important. And without them, your muscles, cognitive health, and hydration levels will all suffer. So it's important that we stay hydrated with those essential electrolytes in the right balance. To make matters worse, we eliminate these three through waste and sweat more than any other electrolytes, making them all the more important to replace. And additionally, due to some dietary choices and restrictions, sodium and potassium are higher to obtain through diet alone. Incidentally, there are so many diets that many of us subscribe to, and it's always important to look at what nutrients might be missed when restricting one's eating to configure to one of those diets. It's just something to consider. It's very difficult to get our full nutrition panel as it is with the Western diet, as we know. Natural electrolytes each perform different and essential roles in the body. From day-to-day functioning. Chloride, for example, aids in healthy digestion and maintains the right pH levels in your body. Magnesium is required for hundreds of diverse biochemical reactions in the body. Calcium contributes to the essential blood clotting processes and is essential for healthy teeth and bones. Potassium aids in regulating heart function and blood pressure and allows for muscle contraction. And sodium is essential for nerve and muscle function and helps regulate blood pressure. It's important to realize that hydration doesn't just come from water, and ideally 20% of our hydration would come from our foods. And again, it's going to come from our hydrating veggies and hydrating fruits. So these are, this is the makeup of the percentage of water within these vegetables and fruits. Something to keep in mind as you're in the produce section. And there's a lot of conversation and opinions about water, what type of water is optimal for hydration. Bottled water can be problematic because we know that the plastics can lead to carcinogens. And there's also pharmaceuticals that are found in our water supply. So the topic of water really could be an entire presentation on its own as well. One thing is clear, however, that the water is a critical source for supporting optimal health. We talked about electrolytes earlier, and the addition of electrolytes to one's water can greatly improve the absorption of the water that we consume. As this graphic suggests, electrolyte enhanced water triples the absorption of a single glass of water without the essential electrolytes in it. Symphony Natural Health has a great product called the Soleil jar, and it's from Himalayan crystal salt. It's like the sea 250 million years ago. It has 84 trace minerals and electrolytes that match your body's content exactly, making it easily absorbed and perfectly balanced to what your body needs. So there's no guessing work with taking a performance drink or a sugary drink that is an electrolyte drink. This is exactly how your body which your body needs. And each chart comes with instructions on how to prepare the Soleil water, the Himalayan crystal salt concentrate. You add it to your drinking water to enhance absorption and supply the vital electrolytes with your normal drinking water. And these are the steps that you do. It comes in a glass jar with the Himalayan pink crystal salts in there. So you fill the jar with water, and you let it sit for about 24 hours, allowing the water to become super saturated. Super saturated means that the water won't absorb any more salt crystals. So it is that perfect balance of all of those electrolytes. And the first thing every morning when you go to your Soleil jar, you're going to pour one of the spoonfuls of the Soleil water into 12 ounces of room temperature water. And that's going to help you to balance and hydrate and to get all of your electrolytes and trace minerals that you need. We also know that enhanced absorption, if you are drinking on an empty stomach, make sure that you're drinking, especially during and after cardio intensive exercise, drinking on an empty stomach can actually help with that absorption. So something to keep in mind. We say to slow down. It's been said that you should be drinking half of your weight in ounces, but don't just chug it down. Studies have shown that drinking water slowly throughout the day helps to keep you hydrated rather than slurping it down quickly. Besides, you don't want 90% of the water to be past the urine. And salting it up. That's right, folks. We're gonna promote salt. Though sodium is posed to as a deviant by many to cause high blood pressure and things like that. Having too little sodium can cause just as many issues. So with the Himalayan crystal salts, we know that that's going to give the best matrix and mix of sodium plus all of the essential trace minerals as well. The Himalayan crystal salt actually comes in cooking, and a cooking salt that is fine and granulated for all your cooking needs, and it's in a really pretty container. This is what it looks like in the box, and just great to add to your breakfast, lunch, and dinner as a way to stay hydrated and to replenish those essential electrolytes. And I know that we're running up against time here, and I want to leave some time for questions. But again, just in summary, hydration is critical for the body to protect against metabolic and environmental toxins. The liver, kidneys, lungs, and lymph systems are involved in ridding the body of potentially harmful metabolites and poisons. The hepatocytes in the liver help to remove synthetic drugs, heavy metals, chemicals, alcohol, and hormones. And we know that adequate hydration expedites this metabolic process, biliary secretion, digestion, absorption, and secretion. Sufficient hydration is needed for optimal blood vessels and nutrient dissolution. And when we're hydrated, or when we're dehydrated rather, nearly every biological process can stall, causing poor overall health. Our cognition can be diminished and our immune system can be lowered. Okay, so Elizabeth, I will open it up to questions. I try to leave some room for the end.
That was perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And folks, feel free to unmute yourselves or enter questions in the chat box. I thought that was so fascinating how even breathing, you can use up that water content within your body.
Yes. I think in this presentation, I went through a couple glasses just
just like talking about it. It's like, yeah, I could use some more water.
Right.
Oh, we do have a question in the chat box. What about coconut water? That's a good question.
So coconut water is a great hydration source just because it does have those natural trace minerals and electrolytes like the Soleil. So it's a great way to hydrate, absolutely. And it is a little bit sweeter, but you're not getting any substantial amounts of sugar with it. So you don't have to worry about the body being depleted with following sugar. So yeah, it's a great way to stay hydrated.
What is your opinion on those liquid IV drinks?
Such as, I want to make sure I speak to the right.
Oh yeah, they're like these little packets, and you just put them in water, and it has electrolytes in it.
So I don't know the makeup of the brand specifically. I would just see what the ingredients are, if there are any sort of if there's any sort of ACE or stevia or any sort of artificial sweeteners. Sometimes that can mess with our pancreatic enzymes and trick our bodies into thinking we just got a bunch of sugar. And so we can have the same dumping of fluids as if we did take a lot of sugar. or just see if there is any sort of high fructose corn syrup or any sort of sugar source that's in it. In general, I would stick with, the coconut waters, the Himalayan crystal salts, just because it's going to give you the full array of those trace minerals and not just pounding you with potassium and magnesium and sodium, that type of thing.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I always wondered about those sports drinks, and they're like hydration. It's like, does it really?
Yeah.
And now we know.
They can taste good, but it actually can do more harm than good when, especially if you're not drinking adequate water alongside of it, which that really kind of defeats the purpose if it's supposed to be hydrating you.
Very true. I'm gonna check Facebook Live here real quick, see if there's any questions. Okay, no questions on Facebook Live. Oh, now I remember my other question. What are your thoughts on alkaline water? Does that actually help with hydration, or um, because it's like our stomachs are more acidic, so if putting in an alkaline water, does that disrupt something?
It doesn't disrupt anything. And actually, like with the Himalayan crystal salt, it's achieving that optimal pH. And so alkalized water, alkalinized water, what it's doing is trying to augment that high or that low acid pH so that it actually can help with absorption and help with hydration status. So there's nothing wrong with it in particular. You just want to consider the source. Because a lot of them can come in plastic bottles, and so you can get the the pesticides and residual from the plastic bottles, and a lot of times they're not actually balanced in pH. So there are companies that are not above board and have touted that they're a 9.0 pH, but they're really not. So you could always get your own litmus paper and test it yourself, but just something to keep in mind.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I think I've seen one of those videos where someone broke it down and tested all the bottled water, and it was quite shocking.
Yeah. Sometimes there's there's good companies and not. I prefer that if I'm going to do a bottled water that I just get it out of a glass bottle.
Definitely. I agree too. Glass is best. Well, folks, you got any more questions while we have our expert here? That was really fascinating research. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Well, we're going to say goodbye to all of our Facebook Live friends, but thanks for tuning in. And I put some of the links in the comment section, so check it out.